Can you guys see these pages right now? So here's the thing. Here's the setup, and here's what I'm trying to do from a visual standpoint. We have exterior, the royal grounds just beyond a castle, night. A silhouetted figure runs across the grounds and takes cover behind maybe a tree. Okay, I'll make that up. They peek out from behind the tree, now peering through a small telescope. Through the telescope, we get a view of the king on the balcony. He's doing something. He's doing like maybe he's drinking or he's singing or he's having food and is all alone. The telescope lowers to reveal the assassin. They look uncomfortable, but no, they have no choice. They have to basically they're gonna kill the king. They take out and I'll say this, a bow and arrow, and take aim at the royal figure in the distance. From their point of view, we can see the tip of the weapon is perfectly lined up with the king. They take one last breath before they're about to unleash the weapon. And then they have a dark figure blocking their view. We're not gonna go that far. But as I read this document, everybody, I'm constantly thinking about, yes, I have to do this part first, and then I have to do this part, but I'm constantly thinking about what's happening down here, because there might be something down here that will require me to either design my environment or my character standing or what's happening to them to ultimately get to this part. Because really where the story really kicks off is them looking down the barrel of their gun or down the tip of their arrow, and suddenly somebody's standing up in front of them saying, hey, name please. So somebody out of nowhere is blocking their view and blocking their weapon from shooting the king. That's the really big part of this story. So everything up here beforehand is setting up the conditions for our hero character so that when this thing happens here, that we can actually get the story going. So I'm just, as I read this, I'm thinking about, I have to figure out, okay, well, what does the castle look like? What is the environment? Is it in the snow-capped mountains of Tibet? And even a castle can mean, are we in Japan? Are we in China? Are we in Nepal? Are we in England, medieval England? What location do I want to choose? In this case, I'm going to do your cliche sort of European style castle, even though when I actually do board this, I'm going to board this later, I'm going to probably make it maybe Japan. But I have to figure out the location. Then I have to figure out where my character is running across the grounds, meaning the castle grounds. Again, do I want it to be flat? Do I want it to be hilly? Do I want it to have a beautifully curated garden? Do I want it to be more rustic and rural? What does that area look like? And then what are they hiding behind? And then from that point on, I feel like everything that's happening with them looking through the telescope and this person popping up, it's all fairly contained. But these are the questions we have to answer before we start boarding. And so I have to also make a floor plan. So in this case, I'm going to just pull these pages over, make them a little smaller since we know what we're doing. And I'm going to say, in this case, I'm going to use a storyboard template as my thumbnail, as my way to work on my floor plan, okay? So first of all, I've got to figure out my screen direction right off the bat. So in the easiest way, before I even do anything, I'm going to freehand out the idea. And the other thing that I didn't write in the script, by the way, you guys, what is separating this character from the castle? In other words, how close can this character get that's going to kill the king before he's too close to the castle? Or in other words, what's stopping him from getting too close? And I always try to think about those kind of objects to justify the reasoning why this hero character is so far. So in that case, when I'm drawing it, that means that if I just have your cliche castle with a bunch of spires and these things, this is my generic castle. And I'm not even going to put it in any location right now, but here's my castle right here, okay? Where is this castle in relationship to my hero character? Meaning, and this is just a question, again, it's not written in the script. This is where we as story artists have to figure it out. If I'm going to put just a generic line on the ground, pretend that's the ground plane, and then I've got my assassin right here, and let's just say they have a bow and arrow. What's stopping this guy from going like this? And walking up here and shooting at the king immediately. So I like to create barriers for my characters. And one barrier might just be doing this, getting rid of this line, and it could be a castle on a piece of ground like this, and then around that ground is a moat, right? You can do a moat. Or what if I want to do something like this where, and I pre-drew it, I've got something like this, where I've got I'm gonna make this guy a little smaller, like that. What if I put the castle on a cliff like this? instead. And it's basically, there's a chasm between where this character is and here, which necessitates the need to fire an arrow far away. So that's part of the thought process, is I'm trying to figure out what kind of natural barriers or obstacles can I create to force my hero to need to shoot from a distance. And the other main point to bring up is castles are, of course, they're fortified locations. And naturally, and this is not for every castle, but there are many castles that actively choose to put the castle somewhere in a place that's not easily accessible to any invader. So there are castles I've seen, and I don't remember where it is in Europe, but I've seen these castles that are like on a little spit of land, and then there's just like, and then, whoops, my dogs are barking at the UPS driver. Then I've seen castles where you have like a little bit of water here, and then the main part of the beach is right here. So imagine that. Here's a beach right here, and then you have a castle on a little spit of land right here. So, castle builders would use natural landscapes to make the castles inaccessible. Okay, you could also say, well, maybe the castle's just on flat land like we did before, like this, but you got a lot of guards here. So there's just a lot of options. But in this story, I'm choosing to make it with a barrier. So I'm gonna do something like this, I think, okay? So I'm gonna do this. Now that I've chosen this, I've made this choice in my storytelling. The other thing I did is, without even mentioning it to you guys, is my screen direction. So in this case, I'm choosing to have the screen direction left to right. I'm gonna have my hero on the left and my castle on the right. So now I've already picked screen direction, which is kind of cool. So now look, let's go back to that document. So we've got the royal grounds just beyond the castle. Let's take a look at that. Make this a little smaller. I'll pull this over here. So look, we have the royal grounds just beyond the castle right here. That could be the royal grounds. We have a figure running up here, and we have a castle here. So in the most generic, simple way of boarding this, I might just do this to help me get my head wrapped around what I need to do. I might begin my story like this. And this is what I'm asking you guys to do for the getaway. And this is just helping me plan everything out. I'll put a hero just so I always label my characters so I know where they are. When I'm looking at all these different boxes down here that are unlabeled, it becomes very hard to find everything. So what I'm gonna do is, if I have my hero here, I can do something as simply as this. If I don't, hold on, sorry guys. I can just do this and add the hero into my shot. What am I not doing? Turn that guy off. Then I'll make a copy. By holding down the Option key, I can hold the Option key and pull this down and create a duplicate. Or I'm gonna hit Command Z and go backwards for a moment. I can drag this down to this plus sign and create a new layer. So now I have a new layer. Then I'll turn my hero on and I'll move my hero over here. So this is one way of doing it. Okay, so I got my hero coming in here, and I'll move him over one more time. And I'm just gonna do this just for time. That implies movement. So I've got my character coming in here. This is already helping me do my thinking out loud. This is not how I'm gonna ultimately storyboard it, but if it helps you guys see it from a larger perspective without having to make more detailed decisions on where to put the camera, this is a very valid way to just work out to help your brain get wrapped around this idea. So then we've got the details of silhouetted figure runs across the grounds and takes cover behind, I'll say, a tree and hides behind it. They peek out from behind the object, now peering through a small telescope. So the first thing I have to do is establish the castle, and then I need to connect a character moving towards the castle. So how do I connect these two ideas? And I'm referring back to that great shot in Baby Driver that introduces both ideas in one shot. So that is a great example of how to tell the story. This is one way of telling my story, and if I want to get more specific, I might do something like this. Let's just do this really fast. I could start off with, if I wanted to be in the same wide shot, I could start off with a castle like this, and then slowly pan over like this to introduce my forest to the left, if I wanted to. Just if this is how I, this could be one way of doing it. So here's my castle, and then I pan over to here, and then we introduce a character coming in like that. That's one way of doing it. It's not very interesting, but it is a clear way of doing it. And I'm saying in this case, they don't already have their bow and arrow drawn out, but I'm just introducing, that's one way that answers the how I can tell a story. And that does fulfill the story points. Read this again. We're at the royal grounds, just beyond the castle, nighttime. A figure runs across the grounds and takes cover behind a tree. So we could literally have in this shot somebody running up like this, and then what if they just like hid right here behind this tree? And I'll get rid of the bow and arrow. And they did that right there. They stopped right there. That's totally legit. That's one way of telling the story. And this is also, again, the wide version in the proscenium. It's just allowing me to understand what's going on. And I mentioned this before to you guys in the launch document. Think about, like you ever seen you watch those movies where they have multiple cameras everywhere shooting the same action. Imagine you've got an unlimited amount of cameras that shoot in every angle here, and you're just choosing to go to a different camera to capture this exact angle, this exact action. So when I read this again last time, silhouetted figure, I have to first have an establishing shot. EXT means exterior. I have to have a shot of I know I have to set up the castle, and I have to have the person running in. So my goals, in order to articulate this idea, and with the knowing my story goals, remember we talked about that. The first thing is, what are the story points I need to tell through my drawings? And this is what I end up doing a lot of times. I don't often get caught up in the minutia of detail in the way the script is written. I try to take the bigger picture idea understanding. So for example, I worked on that. They're doing a SpongeBob Plankton movie, and I jumped on for 2 weeks to do a little help. They had an action sequence that they couldn't figure out entirely. So I went in there and visualized it and boarded it in a way that I thought was the clearest, using what the previous artist had done and adding new stuff. There are parts in the way it was scripted, when I read it, the writer got into details that I felt weren't entirely important. So I kind of closed my eyes to those and tried to see the bigger point of what they wanted, taken it also with what the notes were from the directors, and I omitted some of the ideas because they were in the bigger picture not important. So in this case, what we're looking at is, the main point is 1, establish, EST, establish the castle, and then 2, introduce the hero moving towards the castle. So those are the story points I need to articulate, and I'm getting that off of this stuff right here. And then after that, I got to have them peek around from behind an object and peer through a small telescope. Each one of these ideas are a new piece of information. First piece of information is a castle. Next piece of information of new ideas which are advancing the storytelling. This is the new piece of information, a character running behind an object. Then they peek out with a telescope. That's a third idea. Each action is introducing a new idea, and how I tell it is up to me. So now let's just brainstorm. Now that we've picked screen direction, I might choose to thumbnail it out, and then we'll just thumb it out this way. And we have our thumbnail template. Remember, we thumbnail top to bottom so that I can always see where I'm going. Now, I don't, to be totally honest, and I mentioned this before, I don't thumbnail anymore. I go straight ahead, and it's only because I've been boarding for so many bloody years now. I want to skip this step. And the biggest reason why I want to skip this step is eventually I have to, just like what I showed you earlier with these birds, if I bring this over here and show you those boards, if I boarded on thumbnail templates, then I have to go through the hassle of taking each one of these drawings and then breaking them out into boards like this. And it's another massive step of work that I just don't have the time for. So what I've taught myself to do, and I'm not telling you guys to do this now because a lot of you guys are beginners and starting out, but I used to thumbnail, but because it was a massive time constraint, and because they want everything as fast as you can, I've taught myself to do my thinking in individual panels like this and move forward. And it took me a while to get to that place, but it was all out of the need to be able to move faster and quicker while still being very, very effective and clear in my storytelling, okay? But in this case, I know that I need to get a castle and introduce my hero. So what are the different ways of doing this? Well, I've got my template on the bottom layer, just so you know. And the layer above, I got my drawing layer. And now I can just start experimenting. Okay, well, I got my castle again. Let me just save some time real fast because I don't want to redraw it again. I know I have a castle right here. I'm just going to import that castle to this layer right here. And the way you do that, if you don't know how to do that, is click on the layer that you're going to import from, click on the actual drawing, and hold down the Shift key on your keyboard and then drag it over to your new document. And that will pop into your new document. So now I've got my castle here, and I'm going to make it a little smaller for my thumbnail. Well, I got my castle here. Where is my new character? Where's my hero in relation to the castle? Well, we can do it that one way I just showed you where I'm not really super wide. But what if I want to do what they did in Baby Driver? Well, maybe I can do this then. Here's my castle. I'll add my basic ground plane like this. I'm going to add my cliff like this. And maybe there are a couple of trees on the royal grounds like this. Maybe I'll add a moon to imply nighttime. I'm not going to do any shading on this, by the way, okay? And then, what if I wanted to bring my hero character into the shot? Well, how do I do that? I have no ground plane in the foreground. What if I did this? I'll make a copy of that layer by holding an Option and dragging it forward with my mouse. I have a new layer and I'll drag it down below. This is the reason why it's easier to board top to bottom. I can literally drag the background straight down to my next layer and everything is registered perfectly up. Then in my head, I'm thinking of a cool camera move. What if my camera is like a drone and it's slowly backing away from my background? So what if I push it in by hitting transform and making the background smaller? What if I wanted to introduce a foreground background like this, an element like this, where I'll put a ground plane and some trees in the foreground. So now I'm immediately telling us that the drone is flown backwards from here to here. And maybe I want to go back a little wider. So I'll take this drawing and I'll copy it again. And I'll bring it down to the next layer like that. And then I'm going to push it back even further. Just as I'm brainstorming. And I'm going to... These layers are all in different layers, and I'll keep drawing this background out. Maybe I'll put a rock here. Hey, guys, quiet. Thank you. Maybe I'll put on another layer. So I have I have a foreground element here, and I'm in a same layer, and then I'm going to continue my ground plane, and I'll put on another layer just another tree in the foreground. And sometimes I think it's even in thumbnails. Not as important, but I'm going to put it on a different layer in case I want to move it off. But the whole point is I'm going to have some layers of trees in this shot. And let's zoom out. And so now I'm connecting this house, this castle, camera's pulling wider and wider to this shot here. Then, let's say I like this composition. I'm going to merge these down only because thumbnails, they don't matter as much. I'll pull it down one more time. Then I can add somebody running into the shot. And I'll just make it really simple. I'll have, there'll be a bow right there. We'll see a quiver of arrows. And that's a person running here. I'll put some shading on here just to make it more stealthy. And as a thumbnail, I might just take this area and I'll take this background. I'll make another copy by having Option. I'll drag it up here. And I'll take my character, which I'll put H for hero, and I'll make a copy, and I'll drag it over here, and I'll drag him over here by holding down the command key. I can move him around, and I'll make him a little smaller in the shot. I'm not worried about really animating it, but I'll make him smaller in the shot. I'm not even changing his foot positions, by the way, and I might even do this for my own thinking. I'll just do arrows like this, and I'll say hides here. And I'll just have them hide in that shot. This is a note to myself, okay? So we're looking at the wide, castle, camel pose wide, and then the character comes in. What I'm doing in my storytelling is I'm connecting the physical location of my hero, which is this guy right here, and I'm letting everybody know where this character is located in relation to the target here. The other thing that I need to do, and here's the chess move that I didn't point out, that I didn't catch earlier, but let's see if we can catch it together. Let's go to our script. So we have a guy looking through a telescope. Through the telescope, we get a view of the king on the balcony. He's doing something. Here's the chess move that I just missed, everybody. I have a character on the balcony that I didn't set up earlier. Therefore, now that I'm realizing that because there's a character on the balcony, maybe I need to set that character up in the very beginning of my whole scene. Make sense? That's the chess move, and I missed it already. So what I'm going to do is I'll go back in, and what I'll do is I will go to my first drawing, and I'll just put and in fact, I'll just draw it really big so you can see what it is. Super generic character. There's a guy with a beard, crown, and in this case, I'll just have the guy drinking out of the goblet. That's huge. I'll just make it tiny, like that. Actually, what I'm going to do too, just to make it read, I'm going to add some tone to this, purely because I want to create a silhouette in the sky, in the background. So I'll just do this. Make this character dark and gray. You could even make them entirely just jet black if you want to. And I'll shrink them down like that. Scale-wise, that's probably okay. And I'll just put them right there on the balcony. Somewhere like that, okay? So now I have an object here that we as an audience are seeing in silhouette. I'll make that character all black. I'm gonna hit Command U and slide this to black. That's even better. Command U. Now I have a character that's entirely black, and I know that these spires are kind of blocking his body. So if I were to go back in here, I would change, I did this very quickly, but I would change the background a little bit just to make him read. But in this case, I won't because they're thumbs. But now as an audience, we're seeing somebody that's silhouetted in the night sky. We don't know who they are, but maybe because we can see the pointy hat that it's probably royalty. And when we pull wide, we see a character walking up, and that's already creating a sense of cause and effect, and maybe even an emotional sting like, oh, there's somebody on the balcony, there's somebody running down here, and that's making us feel that this character on the balcony is perhaps vulnerable to whoever this person is right now, okay? That's what it might be. So now that we've done that, we have them running, we have the person running, hiding behind the tree, and now peering through a small telescope. That's the next story point. Can I tell that idea, this character, once I get this character, let me get my hero here. I'm going to make one more copy just to show you where that person will be. Copy, Command V, and I'll make him smaller. So let's say I get my hero right here, and they're standing behind the tree. Like that. So can I show them looking through a telescope in this shot effectively and seeing what they're looking at? And my feeling is, no, I can't. Therefore, I need to cut to a new angle to slowly begin to introduce my audience to who this character is. The other consideration I'm taking in as a storyteller is how much information visually do I want to unveil to my audience about this character. And my feeling as a storyteller is I always want to make it very I want to make it step by step, and I want to parse out the information slowly. I don't want to give you the whole reveal of who this character is because he's our hero. I want to make it slow, and I want to make you guys wonder about them. So I'm going to show, in my head I'm thinking, okay, I'll show only a little bit about this character in every shot. So if I do that, my thinking is, well, I need to go to a new angle. I need to cut to this tree, and I have to pay attention to my screen direction. I know my camera line, we'll pick this color here. My camera line is here, right? I've got the camera on this side of my character, which means this character needs to be, this character is going from screen left to right, and the character is looking off towards screen right. So when I cut to my new shot, I have to maintain continuity. So what I'm gonna do is put these two lines right here, and this right here with this great description is my tree, okay? Here's my tree, and I'll also put down in the background just some lines, but basically to give myself a ground plane of where I came. Basically, we're talking about perspective. We're not talking about heavy perspective today, but we do have like a this is our horizon line and our vanishing point, which I'm not putting in right now, but I'll put the other trees in the background here. And then I will take the same drawing, and I'm going to erase this thing up here because, well, actually, I'll copy this. Command C, Command V, and I'll just drag that down here so it's pretty much registered. And then I'll have our guy pop out, but I want to keep him covered, so maybe I'll give him a mask. And I'll also have him with a telescope. So I know that I have a guy looking through a telescope, and I know I have to have him looking towards screen right. So what I'll do is I'll draw something like this just to get my head wrapped around it. Telescope, shape like this. And then a human, the eyeballs here. So here's, maybe they got, I know I had this character with really crazy hair. Maybe they have like a ninja mask or something like that. And then, of course, ninjas in the medieval days don't work. But I'll put this guy, he's got a face mask on, shoulders, and I'll put one hand here. And this is super rough. And another hand here holding it. So now I have them lean out. I can even use an arrow. And so now I'm giving you some information about a character looking at something, but I'm not showing what the character's looking at, right? And so if I can go back to the pages for a moment and refresh our memory, we've done the establishing shot of the castle. We've introduced the hero moving towards the castle. So we already through those 2 story points. The next one is they peek out from behind the object, now peering through a small telescope. I just did that part. Boom. Right here. Small telescope. What's the next story point? Through the telescope, we get a view of the king on the balcony. He's drinking and is alone. So can I tell that story point in this current camera shot? And the answer is no, I really can't do that. If I was close enough, maybe I could see the reflection on here, but I really can't. So what I want to do, and what could be really fun, is just do your classic, like through the spyglass shot. It's like looking through binocular, but it's not. And if I did this really nicely, I could even do this. And a filter, Gaussian blur, and make it really blurry, like you're looking through the telescope. But I think the only way I would really be able to do that is if I first made all the stuff really nice and black. And I'm adding this to you guys just to show you the potential of what you can do in these kind of shots. So here's my spyglass. Typically when you watch movies where people are looking for binoculars, it's always really blurry, right? So now that I've done that, I can go to filter, Gaussian, and I can play with the slider. That's too much, and I'll put it at 0. I'll bring it up to 1.8, 3.7. I feel like this number 16 is a good one to have it at. It feels really nice and blurry, and it's my overlay. I'll put OL for overlay, and then beneath it, I'll just draw that balcony again. I'll figure out where my king is. Here's my king character right here. And maybe he's drinking from his goblet. So now, for the first time, we're getting a good view. On another layer, I'll draw the balcony. Put some bricks here just to give a sense of people can understand what that is. And now I have a better idea of what this character is. If I want to even get even more in the weeds, what I could do is off of this shot, I'll have to make a whole new layer, by the way. I'm going to save this. I'm going to copy it because I'm out of pages, and I'm going to have to take all this information. This is why I don't like thumbing on here, but I'm going to get that. See, I don't even know where everything is now. My goal is to take this, move that up here to my new panel, because this is the second page. Let's find that, and the king. Okay, I got them all. Great. I'll move them over here. I'll put a K for king so I know. B for balcony. So I've got that. I'll get rid of everything else in this. And what I would have done in this first shot, let's go back to this first shot, is I would have done kind of the blurry shot to imply the telescope is still focusing. So I might hit that, and I might do that first. And the reason why I'm doing this again, I like to introduce ideas slowly to make it resonate more. So when you're first looking through his telescope, you're seeing a blurry image. Then when you get to the next shot up here, the image comes into focus. So now I'm revealing a character. I haven't done anything. I haven't thought about his actual performance and what he's actually doing. So I'd have to make that, I'd have to come up with some acting and set up with who he is as a character. Is he a drunk? Is he a nice king? What's his deal? Okay, so now the next story point is here, which is we see a view of the king on the balcony drinking. I've just fulfilled that story point, so I'm done. Now I read the next part. The telescope lowers to reveal the assassin. They look uncomfortable, but know that they have no choice. They take out a type of weapon and aim at the royal figure in the distance. So now, that's the next story point. I got to ask myself the question, can I show what that person looks like in this shot? No, I can't. So the answer is I've got to go to a new shot to figure out what my guy looks like. So there's different ways of doing it. And when I'm thumbnailing, again, I'm actually boarding kind of straight ahead, but if you're thumbnailing, there's different ways like, well, how do I show the guy's face? Well, if I look at my previous thumbnail panel and I saw him in this configuration, well, what if I cut to this same shot, but I cut a little closer? And the reason why I want to cut closer is I can't show the details of his face on this wide, but I can if I'm closer. So what if I do this? What if I cut to that same angle? And I'm going to redraw it. So I have the telescope here. It's on a different layer. I'm going to turn it down for a second. And on another layer, I'm going to draw a person's head in here behind it to get a sense of how big or small I want their head to be. And kind of so I know where their eye is, because their eye is usually in that area. So I'm going to do this with the guy. I'm going to put like a mask on here. Shoulders are leaning this way. He's leaning out. He's got a whole mask on. And then I'm going to put a little bit of tree in the foreground right here. Here's my tree edge. I might even paint that behind a little bit on my thumbnail and put it in the foreground. And now I've got it all figured out. I've got my telescope here. So in this shot, what's cool is I'm letting the telescope block the entire guy's face so I can do what you call a reveal. I'll have one hand here holding the telescope. I don't like the way they drew that, but it really doesn't matter so much at this point. There's another, and I'll just say he's doing one hand hold. And now I want to do a reveal. I'll take these 3 drawings and I will copy them and I'll pull them down to this next layer. And now I'll just have him lower the hand, and telescope. I'll just go like this, like that. And I'll just erase some of it here. And so now I'm already showing you a little bit about his face, but I still don't see his entire face. So what if I'm thinking in my head, okay, well, what if I want to do one more drawing to reveal him? And I want the tree, so I'll make a copy of that, and I'll pull that down here. And then I might do one more drawing of him pulling his hand up and actually pulling this face mask down to reveal his entire face. And when he does that, then I would see him, I'm not going to it can be a little faster for me just drawing it, but he can be like this. He's got a little scar here to make him look tough. And the scar kind of implies there's something about him we don't know yet. Here's the tree. And even his hand could be, like you could see the mask down here. And this is his fist holding the mask. So that lowers it. And now we get a good reveal of our character. The eye line looks really crappy. One thing is we always want to make sure the eye line is consistent with our characters and in the direction that they're looking. So we want to make sure that he's always looking towards screen right. Looks a little bit better. So now I finally have the reveal of my character. Let's go back to the very top. And each one of these is answering the question. Here's the castle. We're pulling wide. We have a guy running up to the thing. Like who? And as we see this happening, the audience is asking, hey, who was that guy? Well, we're going to slowly answer that. Cut to the tree. He pops out. He looks through here. It's blurry. And then it gets clear. We see the point of what he wants to look at. Then we can even add this, which I think would look kind of cool, is if we saw a little bit of a reflection in this glass like this, and then he pulls it down. Now we're revealing what this guy is, and then he pulls down the face mask as a final reveal. So now we have fulfilled all the story points in a way that is slowly unveiling information. That's the word I was searching for before. Slowly unveiling information bit by bit to pull the audience into the story to make them interested. And then tonally, I know that as I read it here, from this point of the view, the next thing I have to do is I revealed our assassin. Now they look uncomfortable. So there's acting I have to do to make this character look uncomfortable, but they know they have no choice. So I know I have to make them look uncomfortable, but then get a sense of resolve on their face. So that's a lot of acting I'm gonna have to figure out. And that would probably require me to look in a mirror and do the acting with my face and like, okay, how does that feel to look sad, and then to have resolve. Once I do that, then they would pull out their weapon and take aim. And then I have to figure out at a certain point that their view will be blocked by a dark figure. So that's me reading down the road, figuring out, okay, do I need to have the camera wider when this person pops up? I have to start making those considerations, and those are kind of the chess book moves, or the chess moves that I always have to figure out. So anyway, this is kind of the thumbnailing process that I would do, that I encourage you guys all to do. Now, I've made the decisions I made, and the reason why I can kind of go quickly in this is that I've been boarding for so many years that when I can see these shots in my head now, only because I've been doing it for, God, man, almost 30 years now. So I have a slight advantage. Doesn't mean you guys can't get here. And also, the way I told the story, you guys might have different ways of doing it. You could even shoot it, there's many different ways of introducing this character. He can come from the other direction. He could just pop up if I want to do something. If I want to do something different, what if I did this shot here of the castle, and then in the immediate foreground, a head pops up like this, and there's like an arrow on their back. And in the beginning, to keep the focal length like this, I could do something like this where this guy pops up, and then we rack focus to that guy and the background goes blurry. That's another way of introducing the character that even tells the story faster. And then I could reveal on a different shot that he's standing on the edge of a cliff. So there are different ways of telling the story. This one way I'm doing it is just a way that I thought of, but as I was thinking about you guys and different ways of telling the story, I thought, oh yeah, I could just make it even faster and go boom and get right into it. And the advantage of this new idea that I just came up with is it cuts out all the shoe leather of a guy running down and hiding between a tree. It cuts to the chase. It gets to that moment, because really the bulk of the story is going to be with him interacting with this character who scared the crap out of him. So there's different ways of doing it, okay? The only thing I would say that I like about this version, and I'm thinking about the chess move again, is that I need to create enough time of a character in the forest feeling entirely alone, feeling like there's nobody else out there. I need to create enough physical screen time to make a guy hiding behind the tree, maybe even have him look around to see that there's nobody there, so that when that other person does pop up, that they finally feel like, holy crap, I thought I was entirely alone. So this idea up here that I came up with, which might be faster in introducing our character, might rob the audience of the amount of quiet time and patience it's taking this guy to line up his shot. And the contrast of quiet to something like, oh my God, where'd you come from, may not be in there. So this is an example of me going down that road and seeing how I could build in that quiet time with him loading up his shot. And I think I can still do it, which means I can still have him pop up. I can cut to him looking like, he could be looking through the telescope in the shot too. And then I could reveal his face, have him like take a deep breath, like, oh, okay, I got to do this, man. Like, and he looks around. So I can create that sense of quiet also in this shot. So the whole point is there are many ways to tell the story. It depends on what we can come up with.